llamo Roberto, me 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 llamo Roberto. Y es el fin de una era. Muchas gracias a todos, les quiero mucho.
What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another video. In this video I'm going to cover a really just highly demanded person and persona in Brockhampton, the one and only Roberto. So because I'm super excited for this video, guys, I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into it. So Roberto Ontenient, otherwise known as Roberto or Me llamo Roberto, was born on November 1st, 1995. He is currently 22 years old. Not only that, but Roberto is from Miami, Florida. Once he actually joined Brockhampton, he actually started to move out to LA, but he is originally from Miami, Florida, and he is actually of Cuban descent as well. So to kind of jump into Roberto's background a little bit, he met Kevin Abstract through the Kanye to the forum. Dude, shout out to this forum, I swear. Who would ever thought that one online forum would bring 8 awesome minds together to form Brockhampton? But anyway, right, so we met Kevin Abstract through Kanye to the. But before Brockhampton, Roberto worked back in Miami while attending Florida International University, where he studied digital communication and media. So when Roberto did finally end up joining Brockhampton and they decided to, include him in the transition from Texas to LA, he initially was a producer for Brockhampton, and he had a couple contributions on all 3 Saturation albums, actually, even though he decided eventually to shift from being a producer to being more of a web developer. I still do want to talk about his production credits on the Saturation series. So in Saturation 1, he provided production on Skit 1 and Skit 3. On Saturation 2, he provided production on Scene 2, and on Saturation 3, he provided production on Cinema Part 1, 2, and 3. But like I was saying before, eventually Roberto kind of moved away from the role of being producer. Not to say that he probably still doesn't contribute some sort of music or, advice to Brockhampton's music, but instead he moved away from being a producer into a webmaster, where he admittedly learned how to perform the position in real time. In other words, Roberto had no prior experience with the position, but he ended up being a quick learner and contributed a lot of coding, design, and structure to Brockhampton's website, graphic design, and actually co-wrote the Brockhampton app. Moving on into Roberto's character a little bit, this part was probably the most fascinating to me over the last couple of months that I've just been sort of getting to know the Brockhampton formula, the Brockhampton structure, and all that good stuff. I noticed that Roberto has a very vulnerable character. So in a lot of interviews out there, particularly the deep cut interview with Kevin Abstract and Roberto, they both kind of talk a lot about what's on their mind, and they ask very hard-hitting questions that honestly play a big role in what Roberto has made himself known for. So he has a very vulnerable character. He's very open about his insecurities, and he's learned a lot about himself while joining Brockhampton. I think one of the coolest things ever about Roberto is that he's very honest about his role in Brockhampton, what he contributes, and not only that, but in the past and in other interviews, he's been very vocal about the role that music in general and Brockhampton has played in his life. In a lot of interviews, Roberto mentions and has consistently said that Brockhampton saved his life. So one can kind of interpret that in any way that they will. It could be a little bit more towards a serious end of the spectrum, or you could just see it as, Brockhampton was ultimately the creative outlet that Roberto needed to really push himself creatively, to just be secure and just know that you're doing something right. And honestly, that is a very admirable and just respectable trait of Roberto's character, because I think all of us in general just want to feel like we're doing something right, that we're putting our energy, our time, our dedication into some sort of outlet that will make you money, will make you feel good, that just makes you feel successful in your own way. I know success is a very subjective word, but I think that's awesome that Roberto is just very vocal across the board about how Brockhampton really saved his life. And going into his major influences a little bit, hands down, Bob Dylan is his #1 major influence. You'll see Roberto tweet about Bob Dylan a lot, post screenshots on his Instagram about what Bob Dylan song he has. In the Nardwuar interview, he actually got a Bob Dylan vinyl, and that was a very, very big emotional deal for him, and that was just really, really cool of Nardwuar to do that for him. Other influences definitely include Kanye West, obviously, Dwayne Eddy and Lee Hazelwood, Dylan Reeder, Austin Gillette, and Spike Jonze. And as a fun fact, Roberto does have a little bit of music out there. I'll include a link in the description to a cover of Dwayne Eddy and Lee Hazelwood's The Girl on Death Row. I don't think Roberto ended up finishing the cover. I know he did kind of talk about how he didn't feel really good about finishing the cover, but I'll still include it, link in the bio. It still sounds great from what it was. It was a short, like 40-second clip, but honestly, like Roberto, I'm sure, is a jack of all trades, just like the majority of Brockhampton. And a really cool takeaway that I got out of the deep cut interview was that Roberto's favorite song is Subterranean Homesick Blues by Bob Dylan. Overall, Roberto's role in the Brockhampton series, specifically just the Saturation series, was to be like this character that was kind of telling a story and that was developing as the trilogy developed in its own. So at first he played sort of like this mysterious character that was in search of friends, in search of family, in search of Jaden Smith. And then as the trilogy kind of continued, you saw that Roberto kind of got himself in a little bit of trouble as well. And if you guys want, honestly, a very close, detailed representation of what the Saturation trilogy was all about, I will include a little link to a thread down in the bio. And Kevin Abstract actually tweeted about this and said that this thread was probably like the closest theory as to what the Saturation trilogy was all about. But yeah, overall, Roberto is just a webmaster for everything Brockhampton related. He definitely seems like one of the more down-to-earth like people in Brockhampton. Not to say that, you know, everybody else is like stuck in their own egos, but in the sense that Roberto, at the end of the day, still seems very new to the whole Brockhampton experience. And to an extent, it almost feels like he's still processing the fact that Brockhampton is as big as they are and that he got to be a part of this experience. Is there something about Roberto that I left out, or do you guys know a fun fact about him as well? And not only that, but what is your favorite Me Amo Roberto moment from the Saturation Trilogy series? Let me know down in the comments. As always, thank you guys so much for your support. I'm going to continue this series, even though it is unfortunately almost over, but we still have HK to talk about, we still have Kevin Doan, we still have Nick Holiday to talk about, and all three of those people, and anybody else I might have forgotten, are very important people to talk about as well, so I'm excited to put those videos out in the very near future.